So thank you very much for coming and joining our webinar. This is our 20th webinar for SWEEP. And today we are very happy to host AMCS, which will help us understand the benefits of artificial intelligence as they are applied to materials management. We're going to start off with a quick poll so that people can have a chance to participate. So please, if you see the poll, please answer it, and then we will begin intros in a couple minutes. Okay, welcome to how artificial intelligence can benefit the materials management sector. My name is Rob Watson. I am the president and founder of SWEEP. With me today, I have Matt Monroe, who will be giving the main presentation for AMCS, Gary Dietz with AMCS, who will also undertake a conversation with Matt and the rest of the participants. And then Natasha Dyer, our acting executive director and program manager, will tell you about SWEEP and how SWEEP promotes innovation. So I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you for responding. I will post the poll at the end of the meeting as well. So if you did not fill it out in this part of the session, you will have another opportunity to answer the questions. So I will hand it over to Gary and Matt in a second. But first, let us go into our introduction. And I've shared the results of the poll with you. I think people are split between the credibility or lack of credibility of third-party certification. Lots of folks want to learn more about SWEEP certification, which we'll be able to give you later on. Most folks are either a bit behind or in the investigation phase of automation. And we have a couple of thought leaders out there who are ahead of the curve or have AI as their middle name. Their main challenges are technology solutions, followed by staff hiring and regulatory, and then finally environmental. Very interesting. Thanks everyone for participating in this. And we'll be hearing from Matt Monroe, who is the Director of Development for Routing Solutions for AMCS North America. Matt has 20 years of industry experience in information technology and logistics. Gary Dietz is in the product marketing group of AMCS, and Gary brings 3 decades of product marketing experience to AMCS from a range of perspectives. Natasha Dyer has spent over a decade in solid waste issues in California and Georgia with an emphasis on organics. So I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from Natasha in the future about this absolutely vital element. Plus, her experience in the textile and fashion industry it will be very, very helpful. And as I said, I am Rob Watson, founder and president of Sweep. And in a former life, I launched the LEED Green Billing Rating System, and using that experience to bring third-party certification to the waste industry. So let us hear now from Gary and Matt, who will run us through their presentation on the benefits of artificial intelligence in the solid waste field.
Thanks very much. We appreciate the ability to chat with you guys today. And thanks to Rob and Natasha for inviting us. So it's going to be a really interesting and interactive session. We have the ability to ask questions, the ability to chat. And unlike your typical webinar, I will actually interrupt Matt with your questions in real time if you would like to ask them. So we talked about Matt and myself. We are at AMCS. Matt is the Director of Routing Solutions. I've done marketing and worked actually in a number of companies over the past decade that were doing early and later versions of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and it's a topic really close to my heart. So today, Matt's mostly going to be speaking, and we are going to talk about what AI is in the real world. What does it mean to the materials collection value chain? And, well, what does it mean to our futures in ensuring a greener world? So with that, I will hand it over to Matt to begin the discussion.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Very nice to be here with everybody today. So this first slide that we're looking at here, everyday computer vision AI, this is really where we're going to give some examples and context to how cameras and AIs are used in various scenarios currently today. This is a well understood technology. It's widely used in many sectors. And these examples that we'll give will kind of help people to appreciate and maybe understand AI, as it is a relatively complex system or solution, I should say, and it's used in many different forms. We're also going to concentrate on how we use it in waste and recycling specifically. But before we get to that, let's look at these here. This first box in the upper left-hand corner, metaverse. This one here, this really describes a lot of gaming AI. Anyone that's a gamer or anyone that has children that does gaming, this is that intelligence. It's what makes the game harder for the kids to try to beat. It also is used to augment your reality. Anybody that's taken a selfie and put a dinosaur in their selfie or something else like that, this is all done with AI, assisted AI. That second one from the left on the bottom, healthcare. This can be used, this is where AI can be used to identify medical conditions, help diagnose anomalies, as well as suggest treatment options based on the severity of the conditions. So we see this being, it happens more and more every day. Anyone who's been to a hospital or any kind of a doctor's office will see that they're plugged in and they have many different resources at their disposal, excuse me. The next one in the upper right-hand corner, that autonomous driving. Anyone who's familiar with Tesla Automotive knows how this aspect has been applied to every day. As you're driving around, it is analyzing its surroundings, capable of driving completely autonomously. So, you know, you see these every day, more and more Teslas on the road, more and more of this is being adopted, even in waste and recycling. We see beta tests or pilots being run in Europe with these driverless vehicles. So this is really an exciting aspect of AI, vision AI, to be utilized. We also have sports data, and that's something that we see with football season in the US being coming to a close here, and we're getting into the playoffs and through the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. You see these the analysis of these player performances in real time. We see this more and more, and we're also seeing that the announcers are not as smart as they lend themselves to be when they're on TV. They're definitely not pulling these numbers and stats off the top of their head, despite that presentation, but rather they are being fed real diagnostic data and analytics from countless cameras that are monitoring various aspects of the event and feeding it to those algorithms that have access to historical data to compare on the fly and give interesting factoids to relay to the viewers. So this is something just to kind of give an everyday, how AI is in there. You're using it every day, even with vacuum cleaners, they have AI in them, LAR systems and everything else, which we can get into in a little bit. Next slide, Gary.
Yeah, so Matt, I wanted to actually ask people in the text chat if they had other examples, because I certainly do. When you look at companies that are doing educational technology, they're using a form of visual AI to assist with grading, or even to proctor tests where they're using cameras to determine if somebody is actually in front of their computer while they're taking their test. And so I'd love to hear other people's experiences and examples with AI in the real world, as we move into Matt talking about what specifically we're diving down into computer vision AI, and actually a little bit, not from a programming point of view, but from a more general point of view. How does computer vision AI actually work? So Matt, feel free.
All right. Yeah, that's those are good examples, Gary. And really, there's countless examples of AI being utilized today. I mean, cell phones. Anyone that's had that spooky little realization that, oh, my phone is listening to what I'm saying, that is AI. It's not necessarily listening to what you're saying, but it's using predictive algorithms to be able to say, oh, so if you searched on Amazon for a particular item, then I'm going to show you all of the other areas that I found like items, or based off your interest in this, you'll be interested in something else along those lines as well. Facebook has utilized this tremendously over the years, and it's getting better and better, more astute and less invasive. On this one, if we're going to define, and again, if we focus the AI portion to the vision of that AI, it really is composed of a couple of elements. That computer vision portion, the camera that provides us with the data, the video, the images from a vehicle or a location. This is a very rich data element. It provides many different analytical points. The old phrase, have you heard the phrase about, a picture is worth 1,000 words? Well, this holds very true to AI. A single image can relay many different data points, and we can extract those from that image and then utilize that data, size, color, even the volume or amount of capacity, just to name a couple of them. The second aspect.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Because there was a really super question that actually you can get an entire PhD on. I actually know people that are doing this, which is about ethics training in AI. And all I can say is that at AMCS, we do not currently have an ethics officer, but we do have some of the leading developers in the world working on things. And I think that, at least as opposed to, say, an educational environment or a fiduciary environment, the kinds of ways that we're deploying visual AI, I think, have less of an ethics risk. But it's an awesome question. It's awesome to think about. And the person who asked that question, I'm glad you asked it. And it's actually something I will bring up to my management team about maybe even bringing on consulting ethics, just to make sure we're doing things right and publish a statement about how we utilize our data. But thanks for that question.
Yep, excellent. Very titillating. That machine learning aspect, that second quadrant on this slide, that aspect there, this is where you're actually taking the image data that you previously captured from the camera in a video stream, breaking it down to a single frame, or to single frames, I should say. Each one of those frames then is analyzed and annotated to identify the materials or elements, whatever it is that we're looking or interested in tracking. This is then provided to the AI engine for analytical data. The analytical, or the AI artificial intelligence engine, takes this data and can be trained utilizing this data to analyze and calculate the result, or predict a trend, and even enable an actionable result if desired. So very fluent and very flexible. A couple of different areas here. We're using some terminology, and many times people might get these terminologies mixed up or switch them around. Machine learning and artificial intelligence. There's really not a definable difference, if you will, but really kind of the best definition that I've heard about what defines artificial intelligence and how machine learning is, artificial intelligence, the broader concept that machines are able to carry out tasks in a way that we would consider intelligent. Machine learning being a component of that, or based on those algorithms, how those algorithms are compiled from data. So if the data is structured or unstructured, And I can give an example. Machine learning where it's using structured data would be anyone that's received a text message or a notification that the bank is asking or inquiring if you really made that transaction. That is machine learning at action with that. It's very structured data. The bank records are stored in a very fixed format. So each transaction can be identified and utilized. If we look at an AI or the artificial intelligence aspect, it's the same summary of stacked algorithms, but the algorithms are a little more open-ended. So Boston Dynamics is a good example of this. You have robotics that's being used where it knows how to avoid obstacles, but it may not know, or it does not know, what obstacles it might encounter or what is the sequence of those obstacles. So it has to basically learn on the fly how to react to that. So that would be the defining factors between machine learning and artificial intelligence, but both of those are kind of used in tandem, and machine learning being an attribute of artificial intelligence.
So Matt, in our industry, what part, there are some obvious and some non-obvious areas of the value chain in our industry to use a visual AI or machine learning, automation. So can you sort of let us in on some of the obvious ones and unobvious ones?
Sure. So when we're talking about, and again, if we kind of switch gears and focus in on waste recycling as an industry, what we at AMCS have really focused on is that collections portion. So we've used AI to basically identify and give optics to an organization at the point of entry to the recycling stream. So it gives them actionable data and it gives them heat maps. These are things that are very useful to an organization that they really don't have a strong understanding on currently. And if you try to do these things manually by audits, even if you have a supervisor out in the field who's doing container audits, sometimes that stuff can be overlooked. The driver obviously is busy being safe as driving and trying to hit schedules. He may not action all of the situations and may miss some contamination. So where we use AI, Vision AI, for the collection side of it is by being able to identify everything as it's entering the hopper and being able to use that artificial intelligence engine to be able to see exactly what those materials are going in and be able to identify any foreign materials and also weigh them based on severity of what those materials are, so that those that's usable information that can be taken back to the customer from the organization. It gives them optics on where this contamination is entering the stream, and in that way they can mitigate that, so that they can take that to the customers and either recoup or get compensation for any processes that are needed to cleanse that contamination out of the waste stream, or at least be proactive to bring that to their attention. I've seen implementations that we've utilized for AMCS where we've seen a dramatic decrease. And when I say dramatic decrease, within 30 days, having 40 to 45% less contamination events in that stream, simply because they made them aware. They made that group aware and those customers aware of the contamination that they were monitoring. And so then they can be a little bit more proactive about it.
So Matt, I know AMCS is not alone in the ecosystem for vendors that are doing this sort of stuff. I know, Rob, if you just want to jump in with your audio, I know that there are other members of SWEEP that are also approaching artificial intelligence in our space from slightly different ways. If you want to give a shout out, Rob, to some of those other groups, feel free to jump in, because certainly we believe we're leaders, but there are also other partners and other folks with SWEEP that are doing similar things.
Yeah, there's a member, Sensonio, that uses cameras in dumpsters and roll-off bins to determine how full the bin is, and that will allow for just-in-time delivery. I think you mentioned overflows, and that can be handled with either scheduling or prevention, or it can be handled with monitoring upon pickup so that an overflow situation can be properly charged. And then you have folks like Everest AI looking at MRF sorting technology for quality control. It's a little early for pre-sort still for robotics, but a lot of quality enhancement is happening on the MRF side with several AI packages. BHS has a package and a couple of other companies.
Thanks a lot, Robin. We are really proud to be a part of a series of leading vendors that are bringing actual pragmatic solutions to the market. Matt and I are only going to go through 2 or 3 more slides to talk about the sort of AI stuff that's general in the industry. Then I'm going to shut the slides off and actually ask ask Matt some really interesting questions that I've heard in the market and that Matt has heard in the market. So if we move ahead,
Well,
Matt,
before you jump off that slide, Gary, before
Sure.
you jump off that slide, I think there's a couple of key elements that we want to make sure we understand as well.
Sure,
So
sorry.
the resource quality and safety, these are aspects that kind of get overlooked or maybe aren't really discussed as benefits for vision AI in this application. The resource quality, obviously, if you can remove that contamination from the point of entry, then you're able to process that material much faster and in a more efficient way. And also the safety aspects for the drivers in the field. The automation of this, especially with our application, is the driver doesn't have to have any input. It's automatically scanning each one of those lift events, and it's automatically calculating and tracking any contamination that it finds. And it prevents the drivers from having to get out and do those physical inspections. Also, when we talk about this as in overfilled containers, which Rob touched on a little bit, it also eliminates the driver from having to get out and trying to restack or downstack materials, because now you're able to have that proof of those overfilled containers and be able to action those as was suggested, where you can either upsell that, get them a larger container, or maybe increase that service interval as well. So you're really eliminating the problem. And if a driver is very busy and forgets to report it, it's still being captured, because that's the beauty of automation, is it's going 24/7. So you don't have to worry about someone's schedule or whether they're having a good or a bad day. So thanks, Gary. Just want to make sure we touched on those two before we moved off.
No, completely understand. So if we want to cover, really basically what one of the verticals that we are doing with our Vision AI, it's a real simple workflow. So if we can sort of take that generalized AI in the industry and just talk about one, not the only, but one specific example about how we're doing it. We'll talk then a little bit about the benefits to doing this in existing workflows, and maybe even look at a little bit of the business side, and we'll shut the slides off and have a conversation. So let's go through sort of a specific high-level example of something that we can do today that is really useful economically for our space.
Yeah, so this slide here again surmises, you're talking about the camera feed. It's usually an existing camera that we can utilize on a vehicle. And that camera stream captures those images, breaks them down into those, it captures about a 10 or 15 second video, breaks those down into individual pictures, and then analyzes those pictures. That is then sent to the cloud, and that machine learning component, the Vision AI, which is the machine learning component coupled with the AI engine, that actually analyzes these images captured by the camera, looking for contamination, analyzing the severity and flagging it, and then creating and compiling a database for it that's, again, utilized in that AMCS Vision AI portal. So that is a web-based interface, so it's accessible from anywhere, which makes it very usable, user-friendly. You don't have to be tethered to anything with internet, cell phone, tablet. But it compiles that contamination events and associates them with the container locations. It puts these in an intuitive and user-friendly format with heat maps, the graphs that it supplies as well. You can get even granular right down to a specific site location to show historical data of the contamination in overfilled containers over a specific period of time. And this can go back months, weeks, or even a few days if that's what you want to analyze. What the tool does, though, is it really does empower organizations with the tools needed to initiate real change in the origin or input quality of their recycling streams. It really gives them that usable transaction data, GPS coordinates, visual pictures, and so they can actually take that back to the customers and get them to either mitigate that contamination or at least be aware of it. And it also gives for some insight to empower the community as well. as an activist. So you can show that you've been able to remove possible recyclate from being put into the dump facility. So you've been able to segregate that back into the recyclate stream, and also keep the contamination to a minimum in the streets by reducing overfilled containers. Because even if the driver does get out and pick that stuff up, it's not perfectly clean, so you're contaminating and contributing to littering. Many organizations or many municipalities, especially in California and the western regions, have actually adopted fines for the haulers themselves. So the hauler themselves is going to be responsible for these overfilled situations. So again, it's something that has to be addressed. And with this tool, it gives you something that you don't have to rely on the driver to action, but it's something that's running continuously throughout their day.
Excellent. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is that existing business workflows don't necessarily have to be modified in the field. In fact, the drivers may have to do literally nothing. And so maybe you can speak to, and we'll talk after we turn the slides off, about sort of the worker implications in a little more detail, but talk really from the business workflows. How does technology like this simplify or complicate our business workflows?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the examples given here are really the objectives that AMCS focuses on with the Vision AI. So to your point, anything that you're going to implement, we would want to simplify that process flow or automate as much as we can. That means, just like we were talking about with overfilled containers or contamination, the driver does not have to do anything. So it simplifies his day-to-day operations. It's not something that he has to worry about executing at a particular stop, or tracking, writing it down on a piece of paper, or having that reconciled at the end of the day. All of that information is being tracked in real time, so it's actionable as well. And it brings the organization into that next level where the information is readily available across the organization, instead of having to wait for it to go through the process flow of handing off from one person to another person to enter it into a report. Mm-hmm. That automation at scale is another key aspect too. So that first one I can't stress enough, but being able to scale to an organization and take them into that digital age, or allow them to progress and grow digitally. Cloud-based SaaS solutions ensure that scalability for future growth. Well,
I just wanted to interrupt because we have a question from the audience, which I think was really relevant to insights and actionable information. So the question is, curious to learn more about Vision AI analytics tool. Can it be used to create environmental impact GHG reports from tonnage reports?
So we are tracking many different aspects of it. The data in its raw format, you're compiling that data. It's used right now for many different reports, and it could easily be take that data and modify that to be able to create those reports. You're talking about just tons of information that's coming in. The heat map to show areas that need to have special initiatives enabled in them. From a municipality point of view, they really enjoy the heat map. It allows them to focus on areas that they have to that they're experiencing more contamination in, and areas that they're not. Why are they not experiencing contamination in certain areas but other areas? And usually it's about education. It's just about not understanding what the proper protocols are for recycled materials, and what materials can be recycled and what materials can't. So this identifies that and allows you to focus your resources in the areas where they're needed, instead of just blanketing them across areas that may not be needed.
Okay, let's wrap up with sort of one small sliver of actual measurable economic impact, and maybe you can tell us a story about, without a name, about a real customer and what their economic impact has been.
Yeah, so here you're seeing some examples of, in the case that we're looking at here, average number of collections per unit, or per vehicle, which would equate to routes. And if we take the metric and say that even only 10% of those are overfilled, you can see on a monthly basis the revenue that's generated depending on the severity. And in the real world, what we've found is that organizations that even are very strict about monitoring this, and even their drivers are, they have no problem, there's no pushback, what we see is a lot of times these actions slip through the cracks. So an organization feels like maybe they're only seeing 10% of this in the field, and when we actually put the Vision AI on their vehicles and it actually tracks every single event, they find that it's double that amount that's actually what's occurring in the field, and that the drivers are not actioning but a fraction of those. So it's a real eye opener, because again, you don't have to worry about, did a driver miss a particular fill container? Is he buddies with somebody at a location and says, "Ah, don't worry about it, I'll just take this anyways." You don't have to worry about any of that, because the system is running, continuously running, and the driver doesn't have to action anything. It is actioning every single event on that route. And so again, you can see it's a pretty substantial amount. Even small percentages can have a tremendous impact when you're trying to recoup some of that revenue for the extra manpower that it's going to take. And that's strictly on just overfilled containers.
Cool. Yeah. And that's just, yeah, like you said, that's just one vector of the kinds of things that we can do and others in the industry can do to really impact things using these kinds of technologies. Let's wrap up with this slide. I'm going to then shut them off. We've got a couple of questions from the audience, and I have some questions for you too, Matt. So I'll let you wrap them. We'll shut the slides off and have a back and forth. And I want to be cognizant at the time, because I know that Natasha wants to jump in at the end as well.
Time always flies when you're having fun. But yeah, so this last slide we'll talk about again is, what is the future? Where do we see the future? And again, specifically when we're talking about waste and recycling industry, we see this in various different areas. Safety, combining this type of technology with telematic data from the vehicles themselves makes that data stream even more enriched, and you can actually do preventative and predictive maintenance. So in other words, if you have this AI that's monitoring this telematic data coming off of vehicles, you can actually see if, for example, transmission temperatures are running higher than normal, and be pragmatic prior to that actually resulting in a breakdown type scenario. So a lot of organizations look at telematic data and they analyze them, they manually take it, they crunch it, they run it through algorithms and whatnot. But again, if you have something that can sort of learn, that machine learning capability, it can look at things and calculate trends in areas, that can be very, very helpful and impactful to the bottom line, as well as being keeping the drivers safer also. So having situations where, again, you're automating the maintenance of the vehicles and automating seatbelt usage and speeding characteristics and things like that. These are all areas that can be used as counseling for drivers, so that you don't lose your good employees or you don't have issues or situations. Accidents are very, very costly. They're the #1 cost for any organization, especially in transportation. So being able to reduce even a fraction of that has a tremendous impact, again, to the bottom line as well, and keeping your employees happy. Medical side of it, we kind of talked about that a little bit, where you can track, especially when you're tracking cradle to grave, there's a lot of analytics that has to go into that, a lot of data that needs to be accounted for. So that's an area that we see AI doing a lot of that heavy lifting and a lot of that number crunching to be able to make those records more readily accessible. Inventory control in the same area, take that technology to automate the recordings of inventory levels. And when you apply that to a visual sense, cameras are now being able to utilize with the Vision AI, being able to look at a pile and be able to determine exactly how much of a material type is located in that pile, without having to go through and analyze, waste statistics that might not be as precise. You can literally look at it and it can get very precise, and looking at a pile and say, that's 17 tons worth of this particular material type. We talked about fleet maintenance, and again, I'll just reiterate that breakdowns are 4 more times expensive than any preventative maintenance. So being able to predict that and be pragmatic is always the best way to go.
Cool. Matt, we have a question from the audience, which actually overlaps one of the themes that I wanted to bring up. So the question is a little bit about positioning to the community. So thinking about a hauler's perspective, can it be used to create reports, regarding trees saved, emissions saved, et cetera, basically a holistic environmental impact report from recycling or landfilling in a particular area. That sort of goes along the line of questioning that I have for you, Matt, is we asked about it in the poll, is this really just greenwashing and the ability to show the community or the customers of the organization that we're doing something, or is these kinds of tools really impacting the ecological impact of the organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I hear that term a lot about the greenwashing aspect, and I can understand it, but especially, I think people, they don't understand things. If they don't understand something, they might fear it, or they might tend to misdiagnose it. This really brings tangible data back to the organization. So, I mean, when we're talking about contamination, dealing with it at the MRF can be very costly and very expensive. It can even be dangerous when you're talking about certain material types, lithium batteries and things like that. You really want to ensure that that stuff is being removed from the stream, the waste stream. So what Vision AI does is it allows you to see exactly where that contamination is entering your stream, right down to the actual site of it. So it isn't smoke and mirrors. It's actual tangible information. It's usable. How an organization decides to use it is their prerogative, but it gives them that broad spectrum to be able to see and analyze, and then even get granular right down to that point of insertion to bring back evidence to a customer and say, hey, the last 10 times we've collected here, 6 of the 10 times there's been an absorbing amount of contamination, foreign material. Maybe it isn't even a big deal contamination, but still, if you get those things mitigated, plastic and cardboard as an example, and things like that, you get that stuff removed from the stream, and it just improves and creates more efficiency at the MRF, because now you don't have to have those sorting lines. And no one really wants to work those sorting lines anyways. They have the highest attrition rate of anything. Who wants to sit there and sort through garbage all day? So automating that aspect is something that we see, this type of technology utilized to handle that, and all those other, arduous and monotonous, unglamorous type jobs that are repetitive tasks. They're very hard to find someone that's going to want to make a career out of it, right? So
I'm sorry to interrupt, because we had a couple more questions here. There was a question about how this is going to prevent breakdowns, and when we're referring to trucks or MRFs. I mean, one way I would answer that, and certainly I want to point out that Matt's AMCS vision of artificial intelligence in the future, we have lots and lots of different plans. This particular segment, we were talking about our Vision AI product with overfills and contamination, but certainly there are there's research and organizations that are talking about predictive analytics for breakdowns, whether it's oil changes or whether it's actual cameras looking at mechanical breakdowns. Matt can speak to that. I don't want to make any promises about what AMCS will or won't do, but at the high level, AI and machine learning technology can begin to look predictively at what's going on environmentally with a whole bunch more variables than a human brain might be able to take, and offer new information. And Matt, have I sort of recounted that the correct way?
You have. Actually, that's a very good description, and really that kind of nails home what the vision really is for that type of technology and how it's utilized. The data vehicles are becoming smarter and smarter, which means that the computers and the areas that they are monitoring internally become smarter and smarter. So being able to take that data, compile that data, and transition it into something that's actionable is exactly what we're talking about. So trends, if you're talking about 100 different vehicles, many times mechanically speaking, and I'm a car guy, so I like building and high horsepower vehicles. Many times, long time before the machine is going to fail, or an engine or a component is going to fail, it's going to have warning signs that it is getting ready to fail, or it is not operating in the manner it was designed to, which would create a failure. So that's what we're talking about when you get that data back. An algorithm or an AI solution can really analyze that entire group of vehicles, hundreds of vehicles at a time, as an example, and be able to see that trend and see a particular vehicle that's running a little bit hot that day. And it might reach a particular threshold and say, okay, this is something I want to raise a flag on. A normal mechanic, maybe the driver doesn't even notice it. He doesn't even notice that it's running 30 degrees above normal. But over time, that can add to other issues in other situations. So that's how we would utilize that.
That's a great answer, Matt. I'm sorry to rush you, because I want to ask one more question, then and hand it over to Natasha. And this is a people question, not a technology question. And I think it might be important for a lot of our visitors here. AI, for all of its benefits, has sort of, in some vectors of society, kind of workers fear it. It's going to take my job. It's going to break my job. It's going to threaten my livelihood. And that may percolate up to the management and executives of various peoples and organizations that are here or might be listening to this in the future. How do you enable the management teams to make the drivers and other people in the workflows, the people that are actually doing the work, not fear, but maybe even accept this kind of assistance from an AI machine learning sort of world?
Yeah, that's a great question. We could literally talk about that for hours. There's been countless reports that have been done on this. This dates back to the 1900s, early 1900s, with the Industrial Revolution, when workers in the Industrial Revolution, they talked about it. The industrialization was going to take away from jobs as well. And what we saw in that, and what we predict will happen again, and there's actually some sustainable data that can back that up, is it doesn't take away jobs. It transitions the people with the resources into new aspects. It allows them to do or frees up time to be able to apply to other aspects that are more impactful to the organizations, instead of doing these mediocre, redundant tasks. But, robotics and AI take away jobs from humans. That's, it's something that I've heard many times before, but when you actually look at the analytics of it since 2000, and this is from the World Economic Forum, since 2000, robotics and automation have slowly phased out manufacturing jobs at the rate of about 1.7 million. But during that same period of time, they estimate 12 million new jobs were created based off of that. You need programmers, you need system operators. You also need areas where people have to use that empathy. They can't just do cold hard calculations. They need to actually apply some reason to it, and that's something that computers are not going to be able to take over and do. So, I mean, I have a real situation where, when you talked about it earlier about educators, they can use AI and analytics to be able to identify areas that need to be addressed for particular types of students based on aptitude, but they also need to have that empathy to be able to see what that level is for that particular individual also. And that's something that a machine just can't do, right? Mm-hmm. So, I understand where people are talking about that, AI can take away jobs, but really it's not taking away the jobs that anybody really wants, right? And it's improving that. It's taking away the unsafe positions. It's taking away the positions that are impacted by human limitations, right? I mean, think about drones and pilots being able to fly 24 hours a day without having to break or without getting fatigued, without getting tired, but always applying the correct decision. That's something that AI is going to be continually growing in that field specifically. Think about other areas that there might be dangerous. We described the line sorters and things like that. These are areas that they're not necessarily dangerous, but they can be, and they're definitely not glamorous positions. No one wants to be sitting there, bent over a sorting belt for, 10, 12 hours a day. And the machines can do it for 24 hours a day, and they don't complain about it one bit.
Yeah.
I have
thanks, Matt.
An example about that.
We have to actually switch over to Natasha. Obviously, this is a discussion that Matt and I are willing to have offline with anybody. You can always reach out to us with our emails at amcsgroup.com.
Why don't you guys, Rob, why don't you guys put your emails in the chat, directed to everybody? And all right. Again, feel free to reach out, and obviously both Natasha and I are available for answering questions as well. I've posted the poll that we posted earlier. If you haven't answered the questions, feel free to spend a few minutes doing that while Natasha gets her slides up and ready to go. Wanted to thank both Matt and Gary for a very stimulating conversation. I think we are about to see a brave new world that's safer, more efficient, and allows people to get out of dirty, degrading, and dangerous jobs, and hopefully, but necessary ones. So with any luck, there will be more jobs created in programming, maintaining, and supporting our AI overlords than in the jobs that it replaces. So Natasha, take it away.
Okay, here I am. Hello, everyone, and thanks AMCS for giving us all something to think about on how AI solutions can actually revolutionize the solid waste industry. We'll be keeping close tabs and seeing what you all are doing, because it's a lot that can help all the way from the sorting line all the way to optimizing fuel economy for the trucks. So I'm gonna keep checking it out. And I'm here to discuss how SWEEP encourages innovation. And just really because SWEEP, which stands for the Solid Waste Environmental Excellence Performance Standard, with its vision of a world without waste, where all of society's discards are viewed as commodities instead of waste and are continuously cycled back into their highest and best use, is innovation. Just from our vision alone, it's innovation at the highest form for local governments and the solid waste industry. This is a vision that is totally steeped in a transforming of the solid waste industry to one that is based on sustainable materials management. To get there, along with a vast coalition of technical advisor committees, SWEEP has set about to define and standardize waste categories so that we even know what's in the waste stream, so that we can properly measure diversion and properly begin to create markets for what's in the stream. Just some history, similarly to when SWEEP's founder Rob Watson was creating the well-known LEED certification standard that defines and measures the efficacy of sustainable practices in the building industry. When he set his sights on creating the same type of measurement and reward system for the solid waste industry, he noticed that there was the same problem: no standardization in defining what was being measured. So how can you truly know your impact if everyone isn't measuring the same things or in the same way? Take, for instance, the common category of green waste. This is a common category that is measured and reported out for diversion numbers, but as we all know, what is actually characterized as green waste can differ from city to city. Cities within the same region even can have different ways that they're measuring this. In some cities, green waste simply refers to yard trimmings that are collected by our solid waste services, but in others, green waste can be represented by the commingling of food scraps and yard trimmings together in one bin. So then what do we have? What are we measuring by state and by region? What's the diversion? So SWEEP is setting about to create a standard framework to provide a consistency in the way we talk about waste, the way we define it, measure it, and report it, getting us all to speak the same language, if you will, across jurisdictions, across the country. Only then can we get a handle of the system and begin to create an efficient circular economy and markets for materials. So at SWEEP, we look at sustainable materials management from the triple bottom line approach, how it affects people, planet, and profit, and continuing to put our discards in landfills adversely affect the health and top form of all three. We know that landfills are the third cause of man-made methane emissions from the organic waste we put in them, and research shows that due to the high levels of methane gas in the air, people living closer to landfills often suffer from medical conditions such as asthma, nausea, headaches, reoccurring flu, and tuberculosis has even been known to be bred in the polluted airspace around landfills. Landfills are also known for being responsible for the contamination of soil and groundwater due to the leaking of leachate from cracked liners. This then affects people and what they're eating and drinking, right? If that leachate is getting into our groundwater. And then we can come to the construction of landfills. One analysis from our colleagues over at Waste Business Journal estimates that by 2021, there would only be about 15 years of landfill capacity left across the country. Demand for new landfill sites results in the clearing of large amounts of vegetation and alters the natural environment, displacing hundreds and thousands of plant and animal species which live in the surrounding habitat. Not to mention the many years of planning and politics and millions of dollars that go into the process. As existing landfills try to hold out for as long as possible, fees only continue to increase, which is just a sign of more lost resources from keeping landfills alive instead of diverting valuable materials, and a sign of more lost wages for the communities around them as the price tag to dump valuable resources into the ground increases. Poorly managed waste is also contaminating the world's oceans. And I'm sure many of us have heard that there's expected to be more plastic in the ocean than fish in the next 50 years. And you may have even heard the hazard of microplastics and how that's contaminating most of our food, and that we're all most likely all consuming the equivalent of a plastic credit card or the equivalent of a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. And so I've known for some time about the wasted money and putting materials in landfill, but from a recent conversation with my former professor and now colleague here at SWEEP, John Michael Hulls, I learned that we as a society, on average, spend $200 a ton to collect and dispose of hundreds of millions of tons of high quality materials that could have a potential marketable value of up to $150 a ton. That's 75% in returns. Why SWEEP is so important to then integrate into the materials management space is because, as he says, and as everyone sitting around the SWEEP advisory table wholeheartedly agrees, if we don't have an alternate system in place to define and measure materials properly, we won't be able to transform the market from one of linear to that of circular. SWEEP is the only comprehensive sustainability standard for the solid waste management and zero waste industry and should be rolled out deep and wide. And I'm not just saying that because I now work here, I'm saying that because this is why I now work here. As someone who's been part of the solid waste community for the last decade myself and knowing the negative impacts from a make linear system, I know the importance of turning this system into one of economic opportunity and health for the world and all of its inhabitants. So more about SWEEP and how it works. So similar to the True Standard, that was created to certify zero waste on a micro level within a business's building or facility. SWEEP looks at waste on a macro level, zeroing in on the ecosystem that is the materials management industry. So we're looking at where materials are ending up once they've left the business, gotten on that truck, and hit the transfer station. Are these valuable resources headed to a MRF for further separation and circularity, or are they headed to a landfill, losing their next level of worth and value? Let's see, because of this model or this analysis of how SWEEP is actually looking at waste, the only eligible parties eligible to participate in SWEEP, a SWEEP pilot certification are local governments and the materials management handlers themselves, the haulers, the MRFs, the transfer station, the commodities processors like composting facilities, and those that process C&D discards. Membership with SWEEP is then extended to nonprofits and consultants who are being very useful conduits in furthering this work. So a bit about what we are looking for when we're going about measuring a SWEEP pilot participants' efficacy in reducing waste, and even how well they're doing at having a low impact on the natural environment and communities of people around their operations, is represented in SWEEP's 5 performance categories that target different parts of the solid waste life cycle. They are sustainable materials management policy, waste generation and prevention, solid waste collection, post-collection recovery, and post-collection disposal. Entities are given credit for each category based on specific measurable and verifiable actions. Okay, so in SMMP, this category establishes the intent and sets goals for local governments and businesses. So an example of this, and something we feel very strongly about and want to see mostly and more of, is a municipality creating ordinances or mandates that guarantee the sustainability of the diversion programs that they have already created and that the ones they'll be setting about to create. And so this is asking questions like, have you created an organics waste ban? Have you created a pay-as-you-throw system for residences that encourages the proper diversion of materials into available streams and economies? So, and a pay-as-you-throw model is, as many of you may know, people pay for trash collection based on how much they throw away, just like any other utility, instead of a blanket pricing structure for the entire community. This in turn rewards diversion and recycling. A good case study is looking in on the city of Gainesville, Florida, who within the first year of rolling out a pay-as-you-throw system for their programs, were able to report a reduction in the amount of solid waste collected by 18%. Saving residents almost $200,000 that year. Our next category is waste generation and prevention, or waste generation prevention, which is about measuring and tracking performance and analyzing trends in municipal solid waste generation, also encouraging source reduction and reuse through a city's public education and outreach campaigns. That's talking to your constituents about reduction. Next category is solid waste collection, where today's speaker's business offerings show promise for continued innovation for the industry. So for this credit, you earn points by reducing greenhouse gas emissions generated by how you collect your waste, your trucks, your transportation. So as seen today in our Member AMCS's presentation, this would be like using telematics or AI, which is I learned now is called machine learning, to improve the fuel economy of your trucks by optimizing collection routes. We'd also be considering operations that have maybe considered switching out their fleets for electrified ones, or fleets that use compressed natural gas for fuel. And there are even credits to be gained in this particular category for staying on top of the safety and training of your workers, since the level of danger facing sanitation workers in collections is still very, very high, only dropping from 5th most dangerous job in 2020 to 7th in 2021, with it having historically been as high as the 3rd most dangerous job in the nation. So to the human impact, just as shown earlier, that SWEEP is concerned about the effects that the materials management industry may be having externally on the communities in which it serves, so too are we concerned about the well-being of its internal members, your solid waste collection staff. The next category is post-collection recovery, and this credit focuses on landfill diversion of materials through all kinds of different recovery methods, making sure resources are getting back into the market to get the highest and next best use out of them. So, you know, looking at, are you composting organics? I'm sure you can see I have an organics theme here, but are you composting organics properly? Are you getting other materials into the proper recycling markets? You can also get points here in this category by your actual facility being sustainable. So think lean green building, going through the process of making a low impact facility by making it energy and water efficient, and by your operations having no negative social or environmental impact on the surrounding community and people. Our next category is post-collection disposal, and this category measures how effectively you dispose of materials that are truly waste, have no higher use. It's also important to note here that there are no points given for disposal. We simply incentivize best management practices with these credits. And so after adding all of this up, there's a potential of 110 points and to include innovativeness in your approach, and basically how you get credit for innovation. So it's like thinking like if there's some nifty and clever solution that we haven't thought of at SWEEP that actually wasn't covered in the standard, something we didn't think to mention, by all means put it together in your submission, and if it meets great innovation, you'll get that credit. No problem. So this could be like maybe you're already conducting landfill mining and reclamation at your landfills, already recovering materials in existing landfills for reuse. Because at the rate we're at, like basically someday there will be full economies built on landfill mining, and if you're getting ahead of that, we'd give credit for that. So let's see. Okay, and this is how projects are certified, similar to the LEED rating system. After points are added up, entities are either classified as certified silver, gold, or platinum, and there's even a SWEEP 0, which is a pass or fail certification. So tools for getting through the certification process. Every SWEEP Plus participant will be provided with a certification manual, that includes step-by-step instructions on how to certify and in-depth case studies on best practices. SWEEP is very grateful to the tens of thousands of volunteer hours from subject matter experts, some with decades of experience in the municipal solid waste community, that have gone into creating this manual that even outlines the purposes and intent. We've even had really great communities of college students who are very passionate about sustainability and how solid waste affects our environment, who put in a lot of work on creating calculators that help us do the reporting. So very helpful, very grateful to all the thought leaders that have gone into creating the certification manual and making the standard. We use Retrack Connect as our online reporting platform. It has this great ability to allow people to use their calculators offline, and then the calculators that are measuring their various types of diversion. And then it's able to incorporate those calculators directly online when uploading verifying documents, creating a really streamlined certification process. So here's a listing of our dozen or so SWEEP Plus pilot participants spanning local governments and industry. Looking forward to getting more on board, coming future. And So so the organizational, like our personal goals for going through the pilot, why we're doing like a small number of people now, it's kind of like ground truthing. It's because as each city or business goes about trying to certify, we realize that what may happen in real life may not mirror how the standard was written. So the goals of the pilot are for us to see what we don't know and refine the standard, all along refining our calculators and methods of doing this measurement. And then benefits of actually joining as an entity and becoming SWEEP certified, you are showing your constituents that you are a leader in sustainability, something many more residents are noting as important to them. And a third-party verification gives you a clear view to your impact and gives them a clear view to your impact, knowing that another organization has come in and given you the bona fides saying that you've actually done this work. It's also shown that municipalities that get involved have 25% more diversion. This, of course, saves money on landfill tipping fees. And also back to the young people, with more young people being concerned about linking themselves to sustainable and climate efficient causes and business models, you'll be able to attract a younger and more innovative workforce who want to align themselves with corporations who are walking the talk. So ways to get involved. So if you're not a local government, or one of these solid waste industry providers who's going to be going through the certification process just yet, please, still, we could use your wonderful expertise by you becoming a member through a very nominal fee and then joining one or several of our technical committees. The standard was developed, as mentioned before, with many great leaders in the materials management community, giving us thousands of hours. And by becoming a member, you are becoming a part of a community that is providing a roadmap towards sustainable materials management by creating a common vocabulary and a common framework that we will all use to measure and lessen the impact of waste management on society as we move towards creating a circular economy. And so this is just a listing of some of our members. And here are some benefits of membership. Being a card-carrying member, you'll be able to join up to 3 of our technical committees, where again, as mentioned before, you'll be weighing in and shaping the framework that is used to standardize and define what this new sustainable materials management circular economy industry will be when we roll out the equivalent of our LEED GA professional accreditation. If those are some letters you would like behind your name, you'll be able to get 10% off the training program. Also, just as our member AMCS was showcased in today's webinar, as a member, you'll see yourself doing the same thing. If you'd like, you can come back and give us a webinar where we can highlight your process or your good deeds in sustainable materials management. Also, with our great relationship with waste publications such as Waste Dive and Waste 360, we always get a press release of your membership announced through these outlets, and of course, we'll mention you in our own and pump you up and highlight you in that way. So that's SWEEP, to my best of my understanding, only being with the organization for 2 weeks and just being a great supporter since the beginning, really. We'll have Q&A. Rob can let you all know if I missed anything, and thanks a lot for being with us. If there's something we didn't cover or something you think of later that you want to ask us, please feel free to reach out to us at info@sweepstandard.org and check out the website. And thanks again. Hopefully you'll get involved and you'll join us. Come member.
Thank you so much, Natasha. As with such a full set of material, we are a little bit over time, but if folks have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I shared a note from Santa Monica College, which offers a recycling and resource management degree. Are there any final questions for Matt or Natasha before we wrap up? This webinar will be posted on the SWEEP YouTube channel. I put the URL in the chat, and we will be able to send the link to the recording to everybody who attended or registered for the webinar once it's been processed and loaded up to our site. So are there any final questions for our panelists? So let me ask one for Natasha. What do you see the biggest benefit of SWEEP certification being for local governments and businesses?
I think the biggest opportunity is actually getting our materials measured or really defined so that we can measure it better and be on the same page as a industry and as a nation, really jurisdiction by jurisdiction, so that we can divert better and so that we can create more of a circular economy, because I really believe that everything that goes into a landfill shouldn't be going there. And so I think as you get involved and get ahead of mandates that are actually going to start to come down, I think that's the best. That's the best. Just get involved now, because I think the mandates are on their way. And there's so much money out there for sustainable materials management diversion these days. And so we're trying to create a new economy, right, with materials. And so get involved now. It's coming.
Surfing the wave is definitely better than getting rolled by it. That's for sure.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
Matt, Gary, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, just thanks for everybody for participating, and we appreciate
Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate the great audience today. Thank you for the great questions. Again, thank you to Matt and Gary from AMCS and Natasha from SWEEP for a very excellent and informative program. We'll see you all next time. Our next webinar will be in February, so near the end of February, beginning of March. So stay tuned for that. We will be looking at data from Waste Business Journal and sort of a statistical overview of the industry and where everything is. So that ought to be a fascinating presentation. So keep an eye out for your email for that for next time. All right. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. And again, thank you so much for attending.